Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast right through until next week, the 7-day outlook. Let's have a look and see what's going on. There actually isn't a lot happening around Australia over the next week. We've got the usual thunderstorms here and there, but a lot of high pressure moving through to the south. That is keeping things fairly dry. And while there is a lot of low pressure up in the tropics, most of that energy is actually offshore. And you'll see in the rain maps coming up just how much is falling over the Coral Sea, but it's only brushing Australia at this stage. So not an overly wet week on the way, and on top of that, some of that heat, some of that 40+ degree heat will start to sink southwards, but not for Thursday, as we've got the high pressure zone just south of Adelaide, and that is driving in a southerly flow that's going all the way into the interior, but it's not necessarily cold, but the temperatures aren't quite as hot as they could be if it was a northerly coming out of the tropics. So as that moves along, a few thunderstorms around the edges of it, especially around the southwest of Western Australia, going through later today and also going into tomorrow, Friday. Here is our first map. And remember, this is 24 hours of rainfall onto it. So most of that rain out here on this low pressure zone in the Coral Sea, that's the one that we're going to keep an eye on over the next week. And between the low up in the Coral Sea and the high exiting the southeast, there's an easterly flow between all of that. So that's blowing across Lord Howe Island, Norfolk Island, and that drives in showers. Some of those might have some thunderstorms, but more coastal areas, maybe not quite so many thunderstorms in the mix. The further north you go, the higher the risk of thunderstorms. We could be seeing severe thunderstorms wherever you see the pale blue. It may not amount to much, but you get the massive cloud buildups and some lightning around, and that's a similar story for Western Australia as you see some thunderstorms developing there. Again, it's a mixture of hot, humid weather that was pulled down by Zelia, and behind it, look at this big southerly coming out of the Southern Ocean, and where the two meet, highest chance of getting those thunderstorms for you. But elsewhere, mostly dry, and those northerly winds blowing around Victoria still. Going into the weekend, the northerlies, they pick up. So windier and hotter going into Saturday if you live in South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, the A.C.T, New South Wales. If you're in Queensland, you're a bit more split up. Still some very hot tropical weather further to the north, and that's where that offshore low, driving in some rain with that east to southeasterly flow, Mackay, Townsville, Cairns, further up to Port Douglas, those places getting some rain or showers off the sea there, and so not quite as stifling hot with that airflow off the sea. Brisbane shouldn't be too bad for this time of the year. And you can also see that southerly change spreading further along and coming down to the western side of South Australia. More thunderstorms, potentially severe, bubbling up inland around parts of the Pilbara and maybe coming further southwards into the Gascoyne region and clearly into Goldfields. Okay, by Sunday, low pressure zones all to the north, but offshore. So they are not posing much of a threat. Drives in a little bit of rain coming through here in the more tropical parts of Queensland. No surprises there, nothing too out of the ordinary. And that easterly wind carries on all the way down to about New South Wales. Once you get to the Queensland, New South Wales border, the winds start to curve around and they come down as a north to northwesterly. So that's going to be a pretty hot day for you on Sunday as that heat pushes further out to the east. And as you get that combination of heat in the east and that more refreshing change off the Southern Ocean, more thunderstorms coming through here for you. They might even develop into Saturday afternoon and evening, but certainly going into Sunday, you're going to be seeing a series of thunderstorms and downpours tracking across that southeastern corner as things start to heat back up again over in Western Australia, in the southwest, south of Perth, south of the metropolitan area. You're getting some of that heat returning, and it returns further on Monday as you see the red line. North of that, you've got the tropical air mass, and that is pulling down, right down out to sea even. So you're going to feel the heat again on Monday. A few thunderstorms further northwards, inland mostly, fairly isolated. Most of the severe thunderstorms are up here in the Kimberley, north of Broome, and around the Katherine region. You'll be seeing a few severe thunderstorms in there. Not too much energy and activity up around Darwin at the moment. Hasn't been as busy as previous years. And you come further down inland, places like Mount Isa, not seeing much in the way of weather at the moment in the sense of anything dramatic or changeable coming through for you. The low offshore stays there. The easterlies carry on. That's why you're still seeing some wet weather along that eastern coastline. Stays that way into Tuesday. Possibly a few isolated thunderstorms, maybe severe, as you're still transitioning out of these sort of temperature movements. Hot weather still pushing further southwards into much of Australia, really pushing now further into New South Wales, and you'll start to feel that heat lifting up. And on top of that, the windy weather coming down here along that eastern side of New South Wales, coming off the higher elevation and dropping down to the lower elevation, that may lift up your temperatures even further as a result of the windier, drier weather. Down in Tasmania, haven't spoken too much about you. High pressure tracking over you. Not a lot to talk about, maybe a few showers over on the west coast, but it disappears by Wednesday. So Wednesday, your eyes are probably, taking a guess here, at the Coral Sea. That does look like a tropical cyclone, as does the one next to it out here over Fiji. Now, we are seeing the risks for cyclones in the southwest Pacific, out east of Australia, in that kind of low to moderate risk with all of these lows almost every day. Yesterday, for example, around Tonga, there was a moderate risk of a cyclone forming. That's now today dropped back to low. Why is it changing? Well, all of these lows up here in the tropics are all so close to each other, they can take energy from each other. So just as one starts to spin up, the one next to it takes some of its energy out, and so it doesn't get into that cyclone risk. But we'll be keeping a close eye on that Coral Sea low. It is potentially going to be a tropical cyclone next week. That is not locked in. Either way though, low pressure out there. Easterly winds carrying on. You'll feel the heat and humidity as a result of that. Plenty of heat spreading further out across Australia going through next week. And by Thursday of next week, more of that heat pushing down right across South Australia, most of New South Wales, although the more populated coastal areas not quite so caught up in it, but because it's a northerly, I think it's going to be fairly hot. Take a look at your local temperatures and also see what I mean up here. When we zoom out, you see these tropical lows next to each other. They don't look quite so aggressive on Thursday. So that's what I mean. They're kind of almost breathing. One day they look a little bit stronger, the next day it weakens back. So a bit off and on, but this is a high risk area, generally speaking, in the south to southwest Pacific for tropical cyclones. But we've still got a lot of high pressure coming out of the Indian Ocean, south of Australia, and that is the reason why we're getting still this dry weather really stuck into the southeast at the moment. Hopefully you get some of those helpful thunderstorms over the weekend. Lastly, here on Thursday, another southerly coming through, stormy stuff building south of Australia down towards Antarctica. So let's have a look at the 7-day rainfall, try to make sense of it all. As you can see, it's thunderstorms for the most part. Hit and miss thunderstorms around the country. Not a huge amount of rainfall. Most of those blue areas and the yellow-green areas, you're talking sort of only a millimetre or so, up to maybe 15 or 20 millimetres maybe around Port Macquarie, where a little bit of wet weather kind of locks itself in. Similar story for Tassie's west coast. But most of the rain up around Queensland's coastal areas and up around the Kimberley. Kind of normal stuff though, isn't it? There's nothing in there that's really too out of the ordinary, but the dry zone is pretty large. Unless you get an isolated thunderstorm that helps you out, not a lot of rain on the way for the next week. Okay, let's take a look now at the flight simulator town of the week. And this week it is Griffith, New South Wales, known as the Food Bowl of Australia. You can see all the markets out here, all the crops growing. Population around about 28,000. Annual rainfall, 397 millimetres. Not a lot of wet weather on the way in the coming week. Sunday, you got that best chance. Some of those thunderstorms moving through, whether you get a thunderstorm or just the edge of it and a few showers, that remains to be seen. But there is the main street of Griffith. Look at the temperatures. 32 to 41 is the maximum range. The overnight low looks like New Zealand. That could be just an overnight low on a maximum temperature, but there you go. That is the range of just the overnight temperatures. Inland areas, you get a southerly one day, it's cold, tropical northerly the next day, and it's hot as anything. So that's what it's like to live out there in the plains of New South Wales. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll be back again on Monday with your next Australia-only forecast. Have yourselves a great weekend. Thank you so much for all the comments on YouTube. Really love reading them all. Try to write to all of you when we can. But thank you so much for the comments we keep getting. We really appreciate the love and support. Have a great weekend. Catch you on Monday.